We have two major updates from both Shams and Woj that break down the future of this Toronto Raptors team, as Shams reported that the Detroit Pistons are interested in two of the Toronto Raptors' top stars, and Woj gave some details in terms of where the Toronto Raptors' heads are at after the team has been putting itself in probably the worst possible position so far this year. So we got lots of stuff to break down in this video, but folks, over half of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel, so it would mean the world to me if you guys could hit that subscribe button, because right now, with the Toronto Raptors making changes to their entire rotation, if you didn't check out my latest video on that, definitely check out that vid, and the trade deadline just around the corner, things are about to get crazy for this Toronto Raptors team in terms of what's going to happen with this organization's future. So definitely stay tuned to the Raptors Digest. We'll be covering it all, but let's dive into the latest reports, because Shams recently came out, obviously Shams, insider from The Athletic, came out and said that Detroit is actively looking to trade for a four-man, a power forward, and some of the names he's told to keep an eye on are Pascal Siakam, O.G. Anunoby, Tobias Harris, as well as Miles Bridges. Now, we've heard the Detroit Pistons' interest in O.G. Anunoby. Now, Pascal Siakam is getting linked in these potential trade negotiations, and Tobias Harris is also a guy that's getting floated around all the O.G. and Pascal sort of trade rumors, given the fact he's of similar size, definitely a lower tier in terms of caliber of player. He has been a lot better in like the past couple weeks or so, but again, a guy that if you listen to Sixers Digest, you know that Sixers fans are extremely frustrated with here now at this point. So definitely a guy that's a tier below, you know, our top two wings that we have out there in the open trade market, also an unrestricted free agent, and then also Miles Bridges, which is his own sort of bag of, in terms of, we don't know what his actual trade value is in terms of whether or not it's actual competition in the trade market for some of our top guys, because frankly, he's a free agent as well. He has a lot of stuff going on off the court, but he has been good over the course of the season. So it's interesting to know the other competition the Raptors have for our top guys if we do end up making a trade, and the Detroit Pistons sort of approach to this, because I discussed how the Detroit Pistons in a previous video, them being interested in O.G. Anunoby is really bad for the Toronto Raptors team, because one, it gives O.G. Anunoby that bigger role, that bigger opportunity that he has been oh so craving over the past year in order to prove that he's sort of a max contract type of guy, a Jeremy Grant type of level where he's going to be getting paid a bag contract after contract in the future of his NBA career. So there's that front of things for O.G. Anunoby with the Pistons, but also they have a lot of cap space. So if they're interested in O.G. and now a Pascal Siakam, they have a lot of money to potentially throw around this offseason. And frankly, if Pascal Siakam, O.G. do hit unrestricted free agency, we know that Pascal Siakam is going to be receiving a max contract, regardless if it's from the Raptors or not. But O.G. Anunoby is a guy that, yes, he brings on the defensive end. Yes, he's younger than Pascal Siakam, but frankly, for my taste, $40+ million for O.G. Anunoby just feels like a heck of a lot of money. The same way we didn't want to pay Fred even $30+ million. You know, I'd probably go into that range, especially with the cap rising, projected rising in the future. You know, that range for O.G. Anunoby, but 40, that's when you're getting to really astronomical numbers. But the Pistons are a team that can throw that money the way of O.G. Anunoby, so it's pretty sketchy there for the Toronto Raptors if we let these guys walk into free agency. But now, with Pascal Siakam and O.G., all these players getting named, it seems like the Pistons are frankly embarrassed by what's going on with their organization, with everything that's sort of happened now at that point. As of recording, they've lost 27 straight games, and they're a team that wasn't trying to really tank this season. They kept on Bojan Bogdanovic last season and didn't accept a package where they were offered 2 first-round picks in order to trade him away. They have Cade, they have Ivy, they just paid Monty Williams the highest coaching salary apparently in NBA history, and they just had a historically bad losing streak, and it's still ongoing. It's still completely going for this Detroit Pistons team. So they are a squad that are probably going to be getting a low draft pick, but are just searching for respectability here at this point. And given the fact that they have Cade, they have all these young guys, they're sick of this sort of losing culture that's being built up. They hire coaches, they brought in veteran players to sort of prevent this all from happening. So I could see them getting desperate at this year's trade deadline to sort of make something happen. The more they lose games, the more they might be willing to say, hey, we need to just figure something out. This is there's tanking, and then there's what's been going on for the Detroit Pistons this season. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Maybe the Raptors could finesse, and again, Masai Ujiri could slide in, whether it's for Pascal, whether it's for OG. If we decide to make one of those moves, one of those trades, maybe that sort of makes sense. But again, with the new Scotty Barnes at the point guard spot, this Raptors team does look a lot more interesting. So definitely the next few games for the Pistons and the Raptors are going to shake themselves out. But I do want to say one thing, because again, I'm recording this on the 28th. We play the Pistons in a couple days. If we lose to the Detroit Pistons, if they end their losing streak against the Toronto Raptors, I don't care what lineup changes we make. I don't care whatever. I don't care what rationale. I don't care if we beat the Celtics. Something needs to happen. A trade needs to happen immediately after that deal. I don't care if it's desperate. I don't care if it's whatever. Just off of principle. If we end that losing streak to the Detroit Pistons, something has to change in terms of roster construction. Masai Ujiri, an alarm has to go off in his office where he just presses a red button and some preloaded trade, a random trade, just has to go down, because that would be a tarnish on the Toronto Raptors organization for the future. So that's my take on it. A few years ago during the Tampa season, we ended up losing, or we lost a game to the Houston Rockets, who I believe were lost about 20 straight games, and I still feel sick to my stomach during that year. From that season 2 years ago. And that wasn't even as astronomical of a losing streak as the Pistons currently have going on. So that's just something I want to throw out there on this. But the Raptors do have some big decisions to make in terms of their roster. And Woj, and a little Woj threads bomb, came out in regards to the Toronto Raptors as well. And he discussed how, in a Q&A, any update on Siakam and O.G. and Anunoby, said Toronto just isn't there yet on those decisions. So again, they're looking at this current schedule. They're looking at how we're sort of looking closer to this trade deadline, and it's holding true to everything that's going on. But again, we talked about a few weeks ago how it was sort of a real turning point into the season, and if that wasn't, this is. Because if you look at our schedule going forward, the Toronto Raptors have proper tests, not a Washington Wizard-esque test where, we can look at a 30-point win against them and say, okay, things have turned around. If we win some games, like a lot of games over this next stretch, then I can get my hopes up. I can build up some hype and maybe look at Masai Ujiri and say, hey, we don't have our draft pick this year. Don't trade any more future draft capital. Maybe make some shakeups that help the future of this team, or help the team this season. Because, again, the Boston Celtics, big game. The Detroit Pistons, frankly, with how they've been going with their historic losing streak, that's going to be a highly pressurized game for both sides. So despite the fact that they're losing left, right, and center, that is not going to be a walk in the park by any means. But then we play the Cavs, the Grizzlies with Ja Morant back, the Sacramento Kings, who are really strong, the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Lakers, who've been losing some games lately, but frankly are going to be a little bit desperate as well. The Clippers, who have been playing well, the Jazz, I guess that should be a very winnable game. But Boston again, Miami, Chicago, New York, Memphis, LA, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Oklahoma City, New Orleans. No really easy stretch of games in terms of the next month we have ahead of this year's trade deadline. So we need to win a bunch of these games, and we need to win a significant proportion of them, because frankly, the Raptors in the standings right now are in the worst possible spot we could have been in. We could have dreamt up for this season, given the fact this Raptors team doesn't have their draft pick if it's outside of the top 6, and we're currently 12th, so we're out of the play-in picture, but we're only a couple games out of the play-in. I mean, if we go on a little streak, this season is not lost. It is not a lost cause. This squad can do something. We can make a push, and I haven't lost hope given these roster changes in terms of rotations, in terms of Scotty being the PG. We've seen this similar collection of players in terms of Scotty, Pascal, O.G., Gary, and then a competent point guard in Dennis Schroeder. Make a push in the Eastern Conference. Be a 5th seed. Take that Sixers team to the brink. And I know being mid-level team, being a lower-tier playoff team is not what a lot of Raptors fans want to see. But especially this year, where we don't have our draft pick, it's going to be... We're competing with the Wizards in terms of being a bottom basement dweller, in terms of who we could potentially get onto that team. I mean, in terms of getting to the bottom of the draft sort of lottery, we need to just make a push this season. Until, the trade deadline comes, March comes, and things along that line. Darko, Masai, analyze this team, try to sort of scrape together what we can. We bought into this group with that trade at the trade deadline last season for Jakob Poeltl. Let's see if we can make some things work. make a fun stretch of games for the fans. The vibes have been better this season, so it's not like as dreary as it has been watching the Toronto Raptors last season, but let's turn that into some wins right now. So the season isn't completely lost, and at least we made that lineup change, because it wasn't going to work keeping Shooter in the starting lineup, keeping Malachi and Precious and these types of things going. So we'll see how it all ends up shaking out. But let me know what you guys think about all these Toronto Raptors updates. You guys are the best to make it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.